Hey, it's Paul from Twist and Shout, and welcome to episode 2 of Vinyl University. This is our surprisingly popular series. I say that only because we got a lot of attention for this and a lot of online sharing and people really digging it, so we're going to continue it. And it's our series where we talk about records and the equipment used to play records and buying records and selling records and the history of records, etc. So this is episode 2, and this is going to be Turntable 101. So we're going to talk about turntables and some basics and some parts, and just kind of educate you on the terminology of turntables and kind of the basics of how they work, and hopefully that'll get you going onto vinyl even better. So the first thing to talk about is there's two basic kinds of stereos, and they are an all-in-one unit where it is a turntable with speakers built into it and some small amplification. This is a modern example of that. This is a company called Crosley. Crosley has single-handedly changed the vinyl industry by selling just hundreds of thousands of units. We do not recommend them. There's a number of these brands: Crosley, Philco. I can't remember. There's another couple too, but they're all in one. They're fairly inexpensive. They are fairly cheap. They have on them often, this one we put on a Audio-Technica needle, but they usually come with a little plastic needle that is not good for your records, and the clearance between the platter and the arm is usually not enough, so 180 gram records don't play on it. They don't sound very good. They're not good for your records, and we don't really recommend it. That said, there are old ones. Anybody in my age group will probably remember in the 1960s and 70s in school, there were all-in-one turntables that the teacher would bring in and play, Hamlet, Olivier reading Hamlet, or some children's version of Animal Farm by Orwell or something. I mean, I have a lot of great memories of records being played in class. And if you go to pawn shops and Goodwill, and even we carry some too, and if you find an old one and you are mechanically inclined, they can be an awful lot of fun to play with and to use as a portable turntable. However, they're rarely very high quality. They're rarely very good for your records. They're useful for taking, especially battery-operated ones can be useful for taking with you on hunting trips where you're trying to listen to records, because not all record stores like Twist and Shout allow you to listen to records, used records, before you buy them. But either way, if you're not, the other problem with these older ones is that it can often be a big problem to get replacement parts, replacement needles and cartridges and so forth. So that can be a problem. So when people come in, to Twist and Shout and ask, what should I start with? We usually point them in the direction of what we call a component system. And a component system is a discrete, separate turntable and an amplifier and speakers. And those three components make up the basic component system. And then in between them, there are interconnects, cables that connect everything together. So we recommend that you, if you're going to go down the road of records certainly, or really music appreciation at all, that what you do is buy yourself a real turntable and a real amplifier and real speakers, and then you can hook your CD player to it, or your iPod or whatever, and actually listen to music as it is intended to be listened to out in the air, through real speakers. So let's go over the parts of a turntable, because this is something else we have determined after years of helping people with their record needs, that a lot of people don't even know the parts of a turntable. So let's do that. There are two basic types of turntable. There are direct drive turntables and belt-driven turntables. This is a direct drive turntable. This is a belt-driven turntable. The difference is direct drive turntables are driven by two magnets that, when they are engaged, stop it, and when they come apart, a motor turns the turntable. The reason this is good for certain users is if you are a DJ, if you are somebody who scratches or wants to adjust the speed of your record, or if you are a DJ in a radio station and you want to cue records up and get them to an exact point. A direct drive turntable will allow you to do that, to go backwards, forwards, without damaging anything. If you do this on a belt-driven turntable, if you go backwards, you will break it. That's why when young people come into the store, we know them immediately as beginners, because the first thing they do is, and this is a really important lesson, you don't learn with your hands, you learn with your eyes and your ears, then your hands. You have to the first thing young people often will do is pretend they're a DJ and go over to one of our turntables and go, look, and start going backwards, and we know if that was a belt-driven turntable, you just would have ruined it. Luckily, our tables out there for previewing music are all direct drive, largely for this very reason, because we don't want them ruined. And we know people. And the second thing people will always do is just immediately grab the needle and just put it down on with no record there, and then often start. And that's really not good. This is a precision piece of equipment. It is something that is used to deliver art to your ears, and it should be respected. So, this is a turntable. So we have the two types. We have belt-driven, direct drive. If you are just a regular citizen who is interested in just listening to music, we recommend a belt-driven turntable. They're very reliable. There's very little that can go wrong with them. They're usually less expensive than a direct drive, and it works just fine. And it is essentially a platter like this, and inside is a motor that is attached to a belt like this, and the belt, when the motor is engaged, will turn the platter in one direction at several different speeds, but at one direction. And if you go backwards on it, you're forcing that motor in there to seize up and break, which it doesn't want to do. So we recommend just your basic belt-driven turntable. They're, for the most part, affordable. We've sold the new turntable we've sold the most of are Audio-Technica makes a fairly cheap and somewhat reliable turntable. We've sold a lot of them, but they're kind of an entry-level turntable. There's a world of turntables above that, and we sell all kinds of used stuff. And this is a Technics 1200. This is the gold standard of DJ turntables. It's really a fantastic turntable, and it's very heavy. I mean, I can barely lift it with two fingers. And one of the things it will do is last you your entire life. And even if you do experiment with things and go backwards, and there are reasons to buy a table like this, but not everybody needs it. Certainly not every beginner. So let's quickly go over the parts of a turntable so you understand. This is called the platter. This is the thing that goes around that a record sits on. You will often see this piece of felt This is called a slip mat. Slip mat goes on top of the platter and prevents the record from getting any more wear, damage, and kind of keeps it safe, and this is very soft. It's also called a slip mat because DJs would use this often. In the early days, this was always a piece of rubber, kind of permanent, and it would just hold the record steady. In the 70s, when DJs really started getting into scratching, and they liked these more slick ones where they could turn the record and do things on it, and you see how it kind of acts independently of the platter, and it allows for a lot more tricks to be done with records. Again, it's for the average guy, it's just good because it keeps your record, it protects it from this surface, no scratching, it's soft, and it just keeps things stable. For DJs, there's other purposes, and that's not really our purpose for our discussion today. So, platter, slip mat, this part of it is often referred to as the deck. This is the deck of the turntable. So you'll hear people say, and often turntables are called decks. If you're a DJ, the slang for turntable is often deck. So there you have that. This is the tone arm. This is the thing that holds the needle. And very important, it has to be balanced, and I will have on this video, I will have one of my compatriots come in and show you how to balance a tone arm. So we have two different basic types of needles that go on the end. Well, before that, this is a head shell, and the head shell goes into the end of the tone arm. That's a cartridge, and that's the needle at the bottom. You see that? It's a small metal shaft with a small piece of diamond, chip of diamond at the end of it. Diamond is very hard, and it goes into the grooves of the record and takes from there. And so you have tone arm, head shell, cartridge, needle. There are two different types of cartridges, and this confuses a lot of people. This is called the universal cartridge, and it fits into this head shell neatly with two screws, and then the head shell neatly screws into that. Many other types of turntables, not many, but some other, have what's called a P-mount cartridge, which is this. And a P-mount cartridge is essentially the same function, but it comes with this plastic kind of housing device that by combining the piece of plastic with the P-mount, it will fit into this and kind of become a universal. So 99% of what we sell are just universal. Most modern turntables are universal, although these Crosleys are often, you can't change them out. They're P-mount and they're permanent. But 90% of what we deal with here, we do carry some P-mounts for certain older turntables that came that way. And it's not that they're worse in any way. It's just that they're less common and a little less easy to work with. The basic universal is what we sell the most of, and the brand we sell the most of is Grado, because then you can just keep buying the cartridge or the needle if something wears out. 90% of the time what wears out is the needle, not the cartridge. And if you can just, replace the needle instead of the cartridge, that's a much cheaper option and simpler, because cartridges can wear out too, and we carry them. So you have tone arm, head shell, cartridge, needle. You have P-mount needles, you have cartridges and universal cartridges, and we here can show you essentially how to set these up. It's fairly simple. What other parts do we have? Oh, a cueing arm. you've heard that expression, cue, C-U-E. Cueing arm is this thing right here. And if you'll watch this, when I see how that lifts it, that when you cue, this is not set up right now, but when you cue a tone arm, it lifts it off the needle, and then you can put it where you want it and cue down, and it'll lay it slowly down. So it's a much safer way. A cue is important because it's a much safer way of listening to records or specific songs without once you've done it for years, and many pros kind of just use their hand, but it's really always better to use a cueing arm. Platter. Okay, one other thing I'd like to talk about when setting up a turntable, before we show you how to do the counterweight and the anti-skate device, which will balance your tone arm, is in the 80s they stopped using turntables. People stopped using turntables for about a decade, and so they stopped making amplifiers with a phono in. So if you are buying a turntable and you get home to your amplifier and it doesn't have something in the back that says phono, and you try to plug it into where it says CD or auxiliary or anything else, video, it won't sound right. It needs to say phono on the back of that amplifier. And we'll do our next episode of Vinyl University. I'll bring out an amplifier and we'll look at all the different parts of an amplifier and the back of an amplifier and what they look like. Today I just wanted to talk about turntables. But if you do, the one other piece of equipment you may need if your amplifier does not have a phono in, and what I mean by in is these, which are called RCA cables. They come out of your turntable and they go into your amplifier, and that's how it hears what's coming out. If you don't have phono in on your turntable, you may need to buy what's called a phono preamp, which is we sell, and they're $30 about, and it's a very simple piece of equipment which allows the turntable and the amplifier essentially to talk, and it grounds the turntable. Most turntables have a set of RCA cables that come out of the back and a ground wire, which looks like this. And the ground wire these need to go into something that says phono, and then right next to that there'll be a little screw, and the ground needs to be screwed to that little screw, which is metal on metal, and that essentially, if you understand anything about electronics, that grounds it so it doesn't hum. So because in the 80s nobody bought turntables, they stopped putting phono inputs into amplifiers. If you have one of that era of amplifier, you're going to need to get a phono amp so that you can ground your turntable. That's the only other weirdness. So basically, if you have an amplifier, you have speakers, you can buy a turntable with, as I just described it to you, and essentially just play records. You'll have, pretty much all the turntables we sell here come with a cartridge and a needle, and at that point you're ready to start listening to and enjoying records. So I will also have my compatriot Benjamin show you now how to set your counterweight and your anti-skating device on your tone arm so that your tone arm and cartridge are correctly balanced when you're playing records.
Hi, my name's Ben. I'm from the vinyl department over here at Twist and Shout. A lot of people ask us how to set up the weight on a record player, and this is how you do it. What you want to do is find out where 0 is on your counterweight, and you need to find the magic spot where your needle is floating. Your arm is floating, so it's not going down on the record, and it's also not just whizzing up. And at that magic floating spot, that's where you are at 0. So once you've found that spot, you will adjust the arm till it lines up with a 0, and that's when you know where you are. Now that's possibly a little heavy, so we can make that a little... No, that's definitely too light now. Bring that to that magic spot. Put it to 0, and then you can adjust it to whatever you want to play it at, 1.5 or 2. And then you want to have the same number corresponding on your anti-skating device over here, which will prevent the arm from just whizzing across. So when you've done that, it should just sit right there on the player, and then you can enjoy your ride.
So this has been Paul from Twist and Shout, and this has been episode 2 of Vinyl University, and I understand it's been a lot of information, but hopefully you feel a little more comfortable with the various parts of a turntable now and how you basically set one up, and you are going to be a little more comfortable with getting records and enjoying them. So we will see you next time on Vinyl University.